must tell me when my audio isn't right. Yesterday it was a bit distorted, Beena. It was a bit fuzzy, so you got to tell me.
Okay.
All right, any second now. We are live.
Hello and welcome to Moreness-Culture. Good morning, Syl. Hope you are doing well.
Good morning. You're a little loudish also. I mean, just like it's distorting just a little bit. Anyway.
I don't know. I have no idea why it is, but
there, it's better. There, it's better. Yeah. All right. All good. All good.
I haven't changed anything anyway. Okay. Welcome. Hello, Brain. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone who is joining us and will join us later. Welcome to Moreness-Culture. What is Moreness-Culture? Moreness-Culture is, as Syl was saying yesterday, is about acquiring, extracting the superlative degrees of the positive things in life. This is what Moreness-Culture is all about.
Yes.
And
yes.
if one can do that, I think that's the epitome of joy and awareness. When you can choose and when you can acquire and extract and create the superlative degrees of positive attitudes in life. What a brilliant way to live. What a way of being. And this is what Way-Of-Impeccability and Moreness-Culture is all about.
Exactly.
We are doing the reading of, very special reading of Capital R reading of Don Juan's book via Carlos Castaneda. And
well, it's not really, Don Juan didn't really write the book. It's a book about Don Juan, but I mean, just to be technical, okay.
Yes, so the book's about Don Juan by Carlos. And this is something very interesting again, as I said many times, that our intent here, especially that to connect with Don Juan, not through his words, not through his mediums, but via intent, through his energy. And this is the magic of Capital R reading, that you can choose to connect with the intent and with the energy also. And this is what we are doing. Yes, Don Juan might be using a lot of profound mediums to have awareness. Like in this case, so far, it is about medicines, different plants he is using. And they are mediums. Again, personally, this is my understanding. Mediums are profound, they have value, but not more than the intent.
Right, but he's not using medicinal plants for typical health medicinal reasons. He's using them for a completely different purpose entirely.
Exactly. So, but my point is that yes, the medium is profound, but not as much as the intent of that person.
Correct.
Like
that is exactly.
And this is the real thing to focus on. This is why we are doing. That's why it is called Capital R reading, and a very special Capital R reading, because we are not focusing on the medium itself. Don Juan could use anything. Maybe sometimes some animals.
And he does. Like he does use other methods to crack Don Carlos's worldview and with the intent of collapsing it. He absolutely does use other mechanisms as well.
Yes, and there are tons of things people use in my culture, in subcontinent. I have seen many things people use. I saw people who are just putting a yellow piece of cloth on their face, and then they connect with something else, and then they share a lot of awareness, which is I was not impressed. It was in my childhood I have seen that, and I was not impressed at all. For me, it was all just gimmicks and all sort of things. Like, why? Because as a child, it was not in a derogatory way. Maybe in my mind, maybe at that time, that I was not considering them. But still, I feel that the children, especially in that age, not all children, but some, they are very, very raw and they're very pure, and then they are very well connected to the understanding, awareness. They might not be able to explain it in words, to communicate it well, but they are connected to. So when they see something like this, they can connect without any source and medium. So for them, these things become like irrelevant. Like, why you are going into these things? So I don't have that much understanding at that time. So my mind was just concluding it like, like seriously, what this guy is doing, trying to do? Why he's hiding his face? Why his voice is changed? Why people are so like really respectful towards him, almost like uh, worshipping? And it was very distasteful for me. I was not liking it at all. For me, from the very early awareness, dignity and self-respect was a huge deal. So for me, like, why? Now, as I am exploring other things and through a way of impactability understanding, I understand that okay, at that time he had, or other people also, they had those mediums, and they were using it. Well, good.
Wow.
As long as you are not using it to manipulate anything, anyone, or any situation, you're good. Manipulation
Wow.
is the biggest problem in any situation. Even if you are using medicine, if you are using animals, or any kind of source, if your intent is to manipulate others, or manipulate situations, or manipulate anything, then it's a corrupted idea. It is coming
Oh,
from
yeah.
evil.
Oh, yeah. In other words,
But
the
if you are
intent
using
is
any
corrupt.
medium to be more aware, then it's all exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And this is crucial that the intent not be
So
corrupt.
that
This
that
is
was
what,
my
yeah,
remembering right now.
right, right. Yeah, you see, that's why in Way of Impeccability, and I repeat this over and over again, we talk about clarity of intent. It is a conception, the whole thing, right? And it's written, whenever I write it, I'm writing it with the hyphens, clarity and intent capitalized. Clarity of intent, it's a thing. It's not separate, which is clarity of intent. That's when you take it as a totality, it means that there's it has a completeness to it, and there's obviously a greater moreness involved, right? And in
Yes.
this greater moreness of this clarity of intent, it is not clarity of purpose, clarity of vision, which is to see things clearly, to know what your purpose
No.
is. That's a very different thing. To know, to be clear about your intent means that, yes, you know what you're trying to achieve, but it's intent, which means the reasons for doing it are, are you also clear about that? Which you can't be doing it for nonsense reasons, for indulgence reasons. No, see that won't work, and that won't give you clarity of intent. If I'm doing it just for selfish reasons, or childish reasons, or I don't know, being mean to someone or whatever, that ain't gonna work. Those reasons don't cut it. You see, so clarity of intent means to have impeccability as a core part of your intent, right? You have to be impeccable with your intents. Clarity of intent, it's just like the, see?
Of
So,
course.
and everything that is connected to Way of Impeccability, your integrity, your character, everything, your conscience, all of it, right? This is all part of clarity of intent. But it's more so. You need to have every single detail, every single aspect of why you're doing something needs to be present, needs to be there. Why is this so important? Not only because what you put out is going to be connected to your going to be connected to your energy, right? Look at Carlos in this incident here with his question, right? He had some thought, vague thought about the question about this girl who was off her rocker, in inverted commas, right? And so that came up in the divination, but he didn't know what he asked because he wasn't clear. Yeah? So it wasn't just clarity of question. In this case, yes, clarity of question, but question and intent are very related. So if he'd been clear about what he wanted, he would have gotten a clear answer. And in this case, with the questions to the lizards, right, for the divination. But we're not particularly interested in that because it's not replicatable. And like I said, these sorcery things, even though you might find them sort of useful, in the long run, they distract you from the grand purpose, right? So it's not a path that we want to go down. And Don Juan agrees, right? He said there are better ways to do things, right? Attunement much better. But here's the thing, though. It serves as a nice illustration in this way in which the fuzziness and sort of background in his mind, there was something going on that influenced the question that he asked. He didn't even know he'd asked the question. Likewise with intent. When you set an intent, whatever's going on inside you gets put in there. Yeah, it just comes along for the ride. So we don't necessarily have an intent that's very clear and focused. Yeah, right. So we end up with other stuff, and this is why clarity of intent is so absolutely important. Yeah. And Joseph, just to mention this, you mentioned about, you know, people involving in medicine. It doesn't matter what activity. Yes, I talk about clarity of intent for any activity. And I specifically said, you know, like Carlos, he's dealing with these things. He doesn't have a particularly clear intent about why he's doing it. Right? He just thinks he's doing it for academic reasons. Now, whether he's studying it for, you know, sorcery or medicine plants, whatever the thing, doesn't matter. You know, for to be a curer and a healer, makes no difference what you're doing. Clarity of intent is absolutely critical. You want to get a new job, for instance, clarity of intent. You want to be in a relationship, but have clarity of intent. Why do you want to be in that relationship? See? Well, you've got to be really clear. You've got to be sure about your reasons. You know, sometimes people get in a relationship, oh, I want to have an attractive partner. Yeah, that's their reason. They want to be seen to have an attractive partner. Ego. Not going to help you. Going to get you into trouble, right? Corrupt intent leads to corrupt results. Yeah? Like Carlos, he had a corrupt intent with his question, right? And it led to corrupt results. He got something that he has no clue what it was. Like Don Juan said, you kind of wasted all that because you didn't know what you were doing, or at least you weren't clear about what you were doing, right? So it's very key. Now, Carlos didn't know he needed to be clear, but that's why we have Way of Impeccability. So we know ahead of time, because it's not about remembering a series of things. No, it is about understanding the abstract conceptionality of impeccability, sensibility, sobriety, etc., which automatically is going to make you do things because you understand the underlying system. And this is what I keep repeating over and over. I'm coming at from the abstract. It's not specific. If I don't mention clarity of intent, Joseph, specifically with medicine plants, I believe I actually did, but it's not necessary because I'm talking about clarity of intent in the overall is necessary for any activity, regardless, whatever you're doing, whether it be like in Carlos's case, he's, you know, learning sorcery. But again, see, Carlos doesn't know exactly why he's doing it. He's just kind of going along with it because he's getting sort of pulled in there, right? But Don Juan is absolutely clear about his intent. His intent is not specifically to teach Carlos sorcery. No, it is to collapse his worldview. Right? Each incident is a crack, and eventually it's going to implode. Right? That's what he's doing this for, right? And we'll touch on this later on as well. It's very important. So this is key. And like Beena was saying, we are getting to know Don Juan through his intent, through his energy, right? Through the way he does things, how he does things, right? Looking it very carefully through this, from this different lens. And I do bring this different lens because you know, I have read the entire series multiple times, multiple times, not just read it like, oh, you read it. No, I've extracted, like we do. I show you, go to the file, I extract the quotes, put it in the file. You know, we can see it when I'm doing it on the screen share. I took those, sorted them, rearranged them, organized them, made them my own. Yes, I added them to my own philosophy, or added my own philosophy to them that, you know, pre-existing before Carlos, before Don Juan, and merged it all. Because I'm not interested in being able to remember what the Don Juan said, to be able to quote. No, I want. Sometimes I'll use the exact same words as Don Juan and say, oh, Don Juan said this, but I'm quoting myself, really, because I've made it my own. I'm not interested in just knowing something because somebody else says it. That's academic knowledge. It doesn't really help one. It's about application. which means that you have to own it. You have to make it your own, right? So this, all of, when I came to Carlos, it was at the end of a long project, big study project, which was really was very disappointing because it didn't bring me what I wanted. And when I came to Carlos, yes, what I was looking for. And then I realized, wow, I'd actually, kind of done this myself. Yeah? And I had too much humility and modesty to realize that I had created something. Now, I'm not saying that to say, oh, good for me. No, but it's important to be aware that we need to do that own personal creation. I was in an environment which just attunement, which I wasn't even thinking of or aware of, but my situation, my environment forced me to do that, which was quite marvelous, right? And it's quite magical that this happened. Now, the universe kind of looks out for it, right? Because other things mitigated against this, but my desire for self-improvement, my desire for awareness, right, made me create all that. And this is important. I feel this is the path for all of us. And Don Juan will say the same. He'll tell you the same thing. Very important. Very important. All right. Let us go to the reading. Any comments on what I'm saying, Beena? Please share.
No, please continue.
That's it. That's it. I want to just go now to back to our reading. Just finding the spot. There we go. There we go. Just, we'll stop a second. What I was saying about, clarity of intent, Beena. Sorry, I'm just looking for any feedback, any commentary from you. Important point. Beena?
Yes. Okay. Again, my emphasis was on that people I have seen, and not in my culture, but at least I can say that culture around me. I have seen many things, and it's all about like, okay, the basic intent or the initial intent at least is to be aware of something they are not aware of. Of course, it could be about their personal life and other people's life, and maybe some bigger questions also. But that was the initial intent, and then it gets corrupted very easily because they get so much impressed and so much involved into the mediums, and then it's all about the medium they are using. The initial intent just get lost in some nonsense that, okay, oh, so yes, I'm not negating, I'm not trying to negate the value of the medium, but I'm saying that that's not the basic intent. You can use any medium. The medium can vary, of course. Different cultures and different ethnicities have different mediums. They use different. Some people use religion.
Yes. So and this is my constant caution.
Yes.
My constant caution is that to not get focused on the power plants, not get focused on the hallucinogens, right? Because that's the medium. It is a tool that is being used not for the apparent purpose, but for a greater purpose. And this is something that's very difficult to do, to not get immersed in the bubble, right? And like I repeatedly have said, in the use of these things, like in the datura is very good example, so complicated. And then with the smoke too. Well, even though Carlos gives all the steps, seemingly there's critical steps left out and we can't replicate. So we must be very cautious here to say, when regarding this as a book, we cannot extract value from this particular thing in terms of doing it ourselves, to look at Carlos's books as self-help books. Yeah, in that context, all the stuff about the sorcery we cannot use. But other things, there are tons of other stuff that we can. And just because of the climate and the times, this disproportionate initial emphasis on the hallucinogens by Carlos has led to an impression that when you ask people who read Carlos long ago, oh yeah, it's all about the drugs and the trips and all of the stuff. No, it's not all about that, right? It's actually in the overall, it's a very small part of it. The actual teachings, the things that you can apply and use, those are tons of them. The warrior's way, as Don Juan calls it, right? There's a lot there, and you can go further than that too, as I have done, and Beena and I have done. Now this is really cool. There's much
So for
more
me,
here.
just want to add something here, because for me, these introduction to these medicines or herbs or plants, magical plants, I must say that.
Yeah,
It's
power
really
plants. That's what
profound.
Don Juan calls them. He calls them power
Yes, power
plants.
plants. Yeah, it is such an amazing thing, because
Oh yeah.
through them, they were using it, at least Don Juan was using it as a medium to become aware of energies,
Right.
and different realities, alternative realities.
Correct.
So that was the real magic of
Exactly.
okay,
Exactly.
that was the real magic of Don Juan.
Exactly.
To make you aware of the existence of the energies as entities,
right.
and
Exactly.
reality. So
exactly.
it's a
Great
kind
point,
of like
Beena.
we are diluting by focusing on medicinal plants or power plants. We are diluting Don Juan's real effort and real work.
Exactly. And this is what he's trying so hard to do, is to break Carlos's certainty that he knows how the world works. No, Carlos, you do not know how the world works. And this is a quote that I quote. It's my own quote that I quote repeatedly, right? We do not know how the world works. Yeah, we think we do, but we don't. Yeah. So this is very key to understand, that we don't know how the world works. We have no idea, but we have this thought, this belief we do. Very key. And the second book is called An Alternate Reality, precisely for this reason. Now, also very important to understand and be aware of. Accessing alternate reality can be done in many different ways. Power plants, as Don Juan calls them, right? Because medicinal plants, Carlos originally started, and he was interested in medicinal plants, and hallucinogens fell under this broad category of medicinal plants. But Don Juan is using them differently here. Now you might say, okay, it's like, no, it's not for medicinal reasons in the usual understanding. It's for completely other reasons. But it's not the only way to access alternate reality. It is just a means, right? And in Carlos's case, because he's so stuck in his worldview, it is a necessary means, right? Because it's powerful and it can break the thing, but there's a high cost to it. Yeah, it has a cost on the body and the mind. Yeah, and we can't forget this. All drugs have side effects. I remember my father saying this. My father he's a medical doctor. He's not just a general practitioner. He's also got his degree in pharmacology. He can be a pharmacist because he ran his own dispensary. And he's also a surgeon, and he's also a dentist. Now, at the same time, he's also an unscrupulous fellow with not particularly good ethics, right? And very hung up on money. He said, money is everything. That's his philosophy in life. Money is everything. And he became a doctor for power. That's a bit of a megalomaniac, right? But nonetheless, he's still an excellent doctor, right? I mean, he really knows his stuff when it comes to medicine. And he said, all medicines have side effects. So it's not just the power plants in terms of the hallucinogens. Their side effects are just more extreme, right? Because they're very potent drugs. The drugs that we take, aspirin, whatever, they're very mild. I mean, extremely mild compared to the power plants. But all medications have side effects. So if you can avoid taking them, it's better, right? And he would have his patients walk out with a whole armful of drugs. And I asked him one day, how come they have so many? He said, well, that one's to counter-effect the side effects of this one, and then that one's to counter. And, well, also it's extra money for him. But, that was his rationale at any rate. And it was effective. It worked. These patients loved him. They kept coming back. So anyway, so just something to keep in mind, right? Keep this overall perspective in mind. Before we start reading, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Kindle King, who joined us on IG. So, hey, mate, good to see you here. I hope there's some value for you. I mean, it is a book reading. It's interesting stuff. And so, yeah, very good. Good deal. All right. And we continue where we left off yesterday. So now we following on where Carlos is involved with the datura. They made this paste out of it from his plant this time, and he did the divination with the sorcerer, with the lizards, which he had to dip in the paste and rub the paste all over the side of his head, but not on the forehead, right? Anyway, so now he's asking more about this, right? Friday, 19 April 1963. What were all the things I ground from the paste, Don Juan? I ground for the paste, Don Juan. Seeds of devil's weed and the weevils that live off the seeds. The measure is 1 handful of each. He cupped his right hand to show me how much. I asked him what would happen if one element was used by itself without the others. He said such a procedure would only antagonize the devil's weed and the lizards. Right? Again, let's look at this from the overall perspective. Don Juan is looking at the intent of collapsing, not just cracking. He's making cracks for the purpose of collapsing eventually Carlos's worldview. At the same time, we want to understand what Carlos's worldview is, why it's limiting, and why it does need to be collapsed. Also, at the same time, our focus is understanding Don Juan's worldview. Yeah. So right here, we have a very different worldview. Right? Antagonize the devil's weed and the lizards. In most people's worldview, this is simply not a reality. Why are you going to antagonize a plant to antagonize lizards? Okay, maybe they can sort of still understand that you're going to antagonize lizards, but well, not really. What are the lizards going to do if you do antagonize them? Yeah, so what? You know what I mean? Well, they're not going to come after you or anything. See? It's just not part of most people's worldview. This is complete nonsense compared to most people. They'll say, well, what rubbish is Don Juan talking? If you just said this without having the context of Don Juan as somebody, you know, he's already been established as somebody who's got sobriety and sensibility from some of the other things that he said, right? That we can verify for ourselves, that are self-evident sensibilities, like saying follow a path with heart. Yeah, this is a self-evident sensibility, and that gives us some measure of trust in Don Juan's credibility, in his sobriety. But somebody who might look at this, if you just said, oh, you know, I saw this interesting quote, somebody said, don't antagonize the devil's weed or the lizard. Well, what are you talking about? That's complete rubbish. How can you antagonize a plant or lizards, right? See, worldview, right? So we also want to understand Don Juan's worldview, because his worldview, as I pointed out earlier, in little things it comes through, like when Carlos said it, referring to the lizard as it, and Don Juan always says she, right? We get to see these profoundly different worldviews. And when we see the depth of it, you know, Don Juan has this incredible reverence in his worldview. Life, every aspect of life, right, is something that deserves reverence. And to me, this is one of the reasons I absolutely love Don Juan, because I share that worldview, right? Everything is profound. Everything is profound. You must not antagonize the lizards, he said. For the next day, during the late afternoon, you must return to the site of your plant. Speak to all lizards and ask the two that helped you in the sorcery to come out again. Search all over until it is quite dark. If you can't find them, you must try it once more the next day. If you are strong, you will find both of them. And then you have to eat them right there. Remember, I just said 2 seconds ago, you might say, but Syl, you just said 2 seconds ago, Don Juan is this great reverence. That hasn't changed. In this way, says you have to eat them right there. It is because of the reverence, not in spite of the reverence, right? Mm-hmm. Make sense, Beena?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It is because of that capital R reverence, not in spite. You have to eat them right there. And you will be endowed forever with the capacity to see the unknown. You will never need to catch lizards again to practice this sorcery. They will live inside you from then on. They will live inside you from then on. Profound statement, yes? Incredible. I just understanding this from this abstract overview perspective of reverence and moreness. It's like, wow, okay. Yes, this is a valuable, like I said, it is a valuable sorcery, yes? However, the price for such value is very, very, very high, yes? There's a wonderful book by Christmas Humphreys. I've referenced it quite a few times before. He wrote a whole bunch of them. Right? Christmas Humphreys was quite an extraordinary fellow. He was a Buddhist, and particularly a Buddhist scholar, and a sharer of Buddhism, not particular Buddhism, but all Buddhism. Right? Doesn't matter what it was. Theravada, Hinayana, Mahayana, Tibetan, doesn't matter. Zen, doesn't matter. He was in the overall, he said, right? And he wrote a book called The Buddhist Scriptures, right? And he extracted, because there's just, Buddhist scriptures are huge. I mean, we think of Christian scriptures, you got the Bible, and you may have a few other things, but it's very small relatively. But Buddhist scriptures, I mean, it's bigger than the Library of Congress, kind of, right? It's like huge, right? Tons of it. And so he extracted all of this. And one thing that stuck with me from those scriptures was the powers of a lesser sage, if I remember the titling correctly. I may be paraphrasing it, but I'm pretty sure that was exactly the words, but it means the same thing, right? The powers of a lesser sage, not the greater sage, a lesser sage. And I remember 3 specifically that stuck with me. I don't remember, there were like 10 of them. I don't remember, or 12 of them. 12 was a very popular number for this, by the way. So, but I remember 3. One of the lesser powers, sorry, powers, or I think there was even lesser powers of the lesser sage. But anyway, one of the powers of a lesser sage was the all-seeing ear and the all-seeing eye, which is what Don Juan is talking about. Yeah, right? The ability to see the unknown, right? All-seeing eye, all-seeing ear. I'll get to that. And one of the other powers of a lesser sage, and I'm emphasizing this lesser because you're going to see why in 1 second, was the ability to walk on water. So according to Buddhism, Jesus was a lesser sage. All right, now I don't want to mean to disparage Jesus, right? I mean, but the point why they say lesser sage, and there was some explanation for this at some point somewhere, was because if you get focused on the acquisition of these powers, you miss the real point of Buddhism, which is to become a Buddha also yourself. The Buddha, as we call them, is not there's not one. By implication, we say the Buddha. And we're talking about a particular Buddha, one out of many. There have been many other Buddhas over the eons. Yeah. Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, the individual's name before he became a Buddha. It's a Buddha, right? He taught you also how to become a Buddha. Jesus did the same thing. He constantly tried to teach his disciples and anybody who would listen to do what he did. Every single time he performed a miracle, he said, you too could do this. All you need is to believe, to have faith. In other words, you have to shift your worldview. And what he was talking about was literally shifting our reality. He said, you can move those mountains, literally those mountains over there. Now, if you did move them, you'd have to take responsibility for all the havoc you're going to cause in moving them, but he said you could do it, right? Literally, he said those mountains, not metaphorically, but literally. And every time he caused a miracle, he said, you too can do this, right? And he was very adamant about this. So in Jesus's worldview, which is similar to Buddhist in many, many instances, right? He's talking about reality being fluid. Now, I coined this term fluid reality. So Jesus is preaching fluid reality. You say, well, what do you mean? I never saw this term fluid reality. But it's the abstract overview conception. When you say you can move those mountains, right? Or you can, make more bread and, multiply food, whatever, turn water into wine, etc. It means reality is not fixed. It can be changed. It's fluid, right? And this is a profound teaching. But again, we don't want to get caught up in the details of that, because yes, you can mess with the reality, but to what end? If you don't get to the end point in terms of the heaven or nirvana, same concept. In other words, a state of being and a place of being where everything is absolutely the maximum of superlative that you can possibly get. Yeah. So this is the end point. If you get stuck on these lesser details, you may never get there. So you're going to miss the real goal for these supposedly wonderful sub goals, right? But they're sub goals. So I just have to emphasize this. It's very important. Don Juan likewise. He calls it freedom. Right? Everything that he does is there in our bid for freedom. And he specifically points out that the sorcerers of old, they missed this, right? They missed the boat. They were very powerful, could, in the normal sense of the word, could do much and manipulate reality, right? They had control over reality, right? But didn't help them. They didn't achieve ultimate freedom. Okay? So very, very important to understand this end goal, right? The end goal of the ultimate. Yes, whatever you call the ultimate, whether it be heaven, nirvana, freedom, doesn't matter. It's ultimate goal. All right. Very, very important. So last was saying, Don Juan said, they will live inside you from then on. And very powerful alternate reality perspective. Yes. What do I do if I find only one of them? Asked Carlos. He's always coming with these technical details. Yeah, it's fascinating how he asks. I mean, it leads to interesting answers. Maybe I'd ask similar questions, but still, if you find only one of them, you must let her go at the end of your search. If you find her the first day, don't keep her hoping you will catch the other one the next day. That will only spoil your friendship with them. What happens if I can't find them at all? I think that would be the best thing for you. It implies that you must catch 2 lizards every time you want to help, but it also implies that you are free. Isn't that exactly now confirmation of precisely what I was saying? There's a price for these things. See?
Yes.
So if you do end up catching them and ingesting them and taking them into you, because you're not eating them for food value, you are ingesting them. You are really ingesting is even not a good word. You are taking them inside you. Eating is just a means of taking them inside. Yeah? But now you are bound to it and you're not free. See, so now we start to see the price of these things. The price of sorcery is limitations of your freedom. You gain particular powers, but you lose your greater freedom. Yeah? Very important to understand, because it's so easy to get caught up in the rewards of this. Oh, you'll get to be able to see the unknown whenever you want. Oh, that's fantastic. There's more, people. There's more. We need to think in superlatives. And this is why thinking things through to the end is one of the core tools in Way-Of-Impeccability, and why it is written as altogether with the hyphens, each word initially capitalized except the last 3. To the end is in all caps, right? It's thinking things through to the end, because you got to shout that to end, got to emphasize. If you don't go to the end like this, you can get stuck, right? You can think this through and say, wow, this is great. I'd love to have this ability to see the unknown. Yeah, but think it through to the end. This can corrupt you from thinking that you've got everything and you don't have everything. No? Very important. Very important. I really have to emphasize this. It's so easy for us to get lost in the path and thinking the path is the end when it's not, or the tool is the ultimate when it's not. What do you mean free? That's important here. Look, Carlos cannot figure out what Don Juan says for himself. When I first read this, I always wanted to smack Carlos when he asked these questions. It's like, seriously, dude, can't you think for yourself and just contextually practice contextual discernment to discern what Don Juan means, to figure out what he means, from the context? It's like obvious, but no, at least it was obvious to me. All right, now I am thankful that Carlos does ask these questions, because it is a way of making the obvious obvious, because the obvious isn't always obvious. It's only obvious once it's become obvious, but it wasn't obvious until it became obvious. So in this case, Carlos is not seeing the obvious, right? So it's very good, and it emphasizes the point. What do you mean free? Free from being the slave of the devil's weed. If the lizards are to live inside you, the devil's weed will never let you go. Again, here comes this redundant, obvious question. Is that bad? Duh, Carlos. Of course it's bad, because you're not free. Yeah. Of course it is bad. Oh, sorry, here Don Juan says, I was just responding, but Yeah, in attunement with Don Juan. Of course it is bad. She will cut you off from everything else. She, not it. She. Devil's weed is also she. That's likely why using the female lizards too. She will cut you off from everything else. You will have to spend your life grooming her as an ally. She is possessive. Once she dominates you, there's only one way to go, her way. See now, Carlos doesn't pause here and reflect on this and say, oh, I see. Oh, yeah, that's no good. It just doesn't say anything. He just leaves it up there. He doesn't finish. He doesn't take it into him and finish the thought, the idea, to make it conclusive. There's not a choice here. Carlos leaving it by implication to his own self internally, right? His own brain, his own mind, his own body, his own being. Is that, well, it's kind of, he hasn't decided which way, right? Very important to finish things internally. Otherwise, you're left with this vagueness, this nebulosity. And that nebulosity, it's very crucial, as we're going to see, at how it's going to impact and affect Carlos negatively, because he doesn't have this clarity. Doesn't finish it, see? Doesn't like to make decisions. What if I find that the lizards are dead? He's still going on about the details. What difference does it make now, dude? You know, to let this whole thing go already. Yeah. I mean, right there, you should have said, well, in that case, Don Juan, I never really thought about it this way. I want no part of this. Yeah? But no, he's still going on. He's asking, because he's asking, what if I find the lizards dead? By implication, and your own brain pays attention to what you say relative to implications. By implication, he's still going forward with it. He's going to continue. He hasn't given it up yet, despite this incredible warning that he's getting. Don Juan says, if you find one or both of them dead, you must not attempt to do this sorcery for some time. Lay off for a while. I think this is all I need to tell you. What I have told you is the rule. Whenever you practice the sorcery by yourself, you must follow all the steps I have described while you sit in front of your plant. One more thing. You must not eat or drink until the sorcery is finished. Chapter 6. Now, but again, to me, if I heard there what Don Juan said, I did. That's why I emphasize that, yes, this is interesting, but not useful. Not only because we cannot follow and replicate the steps, but because ultimately it is a flawed tool. I don't want to be using a tool that's going to own me, thank you, and reduce my freedom. Hell no, thank you very much. Nope, absolutely not. So all of these practices, all of the sorcery, all falls into the same thing. It's not just this, it's all of them, right? They all impinge and reduce your freedom in some way. They all come with a great price, right? That is an incredible price to pay, have your freedom limited, yeah? To not be able to have real freedom. You might as well, you don't have partial freedom. It's like being pregnant, all or nothing, right? The next step in chapter 6. What is the time? All right. What do you think, Beena? Either end early or continue a bit, because it's still on the second. I'm still basically doing this.
No, we do have a bit time, so we can read.
All right. Okay. Chapter 6. The next step in Don Juan's teaching was a new aspect of mastering the second portion of the Datura route. In the time that elapsed between the two stages of learning Don Juan, in the time elapsed between the two stages of learning, should be a comma there, Don Juan inquired about the development of my own plant. Whoever did this, I'm very grateful to them. They put all this into the file. But it seems to me they typed it out, because I do find typos like this occasionally. Now, it may be the original didn't have the comma too, but I've seen other things, right? They didn't just copy and paste. So, I mean, this has been around for a long time. Anyway, it's quite a job that somebody did. Don Juan inquired about the development of my plant. Thursday, 27 June, 1963. It is a good practice to test the devil's weed before embarking fully on her path, Don Juan said. It's a good practice to test the devil's weed before fully embarking on her path. It's part of impeccability. Yeah? How do you test her, Don Juan? You must try another sorcery with the lizards. You have all the elements that are needed to ask one more question of the lizards, this time without my help. Is it very necessary that I do the sorcery, Don Juan? Now, there's a good question. Finally. Yeah, right, Beena? Beena? Where'd you go? Are you muted? Yeah, you muted, Beena.
Yes,
Don't you think
yes.
this is finally a good question, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you need to know why. You need to know why. Yeah, you can't just take things on face value.
Exactly. Clarity of intent.
Exactly. Is it very necessary that I do the sorcery, Don Juan? Very necessary. It is the best way to test the feelings of the devil's weed towards you. All right. So Don Juan takes his question a bit more specifically. Yeah. Because in context, he's saying this testing, not the sorcery as a whole, but this particular testing again, right? So Don Juan answers as a continuation of the context that he was talking about, which is now the second testing, right? Not the sorcery in the overall, right? Whereas to me, the question that maybe Carlos by implication and body language at the time was asking this, and Don Juan took it that way. But and it's likely that he asked it most because all his other questions were very detailed and specific, right? So it's not an abstract question, which it should be. It is the best way to test the feelings of the devil's weed towards you. She tests you all the time, so it is only fair that you test her too. And if you feel anywhere along her path that for some reason you should not go on, then you must simply stop. Don Juan is also very, very scrupulous with his integrity and his ethics. Yes, he may have understood that that question was in fact in the abstract, but Don Juan understands about choice. Yes, and the reason he does things is always attunement, and whatever reason attunement said this is the thing to do. But he cannot tell Carlos, you shouldn't or you should. He can only give him the options, and then Carlos must decide, right? This is the ethical way. This is why I don't teach. And Beena doesn't teach. It's why we share. Share, 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 share. That's it. That's all we do is share. It's very, very important to understand this, because when you teach, you can inadvertently subvert choice. That's the right word here, subvert. Yeah? Inadvertently subvert choice, and that is never good. Yeah? And you are not doing whoever you are teaching any good. Yeah? But when you share, you enhance choice, you expand choice, you provide the ability to choose. That you can maybe teach, yes, but not the choices themselves. Those have to be made by the individual themselves and only themselves, right? No one else can make those choices. It's very important that we share in such a way, especially when you are in a position of influence and authority. Share in such a way that you aren't preempting choices, that you aren't steering somebody to choice, that you don't make it seem that there is no choice, which is why Don Juan answers in the detail here, not in the abstract. If you answer the abstract, he would say, hell no, dude, this is a stupid thing to do. Right? But choice, right? And he's making Carlos aware of the greater choice of an alternate reality and how you choose, right? So there's a bigger picture, a deep sobriety, sophistication, incredible sophistication to what Don Juan does. Not obvious here. I'm bringing it in from later, right? And also from my understanding of what's going on, right? And taking things further, right? So it's more bringing it here, but it makes for more options, right? Very important. Saturday, 29 June 1963. I brought up the subject of the devil's weed. I wanted Don Juan to tell me more about it, and yet I did not want to be committed to participate. Yeah, that's just interesting. It tells us a lot about Carlos, right? Like I said, he doesn't want to make commitments, right? He doesn't want to be locked in. He has a bit of be a man in him, right? And he's a bit of a bullshitter too, as will come out later on, right? And they never want to be committed. They never want to have things definitive to them. They always want to have all their options open, because if you're definitive, you can get caught out. Yeah. So they make a great effort not to be definitive, but it carries over into other things, that mindset of theirs, right? Second portion is used only to divine. Isn't that so, Don Juan? I asked to start the conversation. Not only to divine, one learns the sorcery of the lizards with the aid of the second portion, and at the same time, one tests the devil's weed. But in reality, the second portion is used for other purposes. The sorcery of the lizards is only the beginning. Then what is it used for, Don Juan? He did not answer. He abruptly changed the subject and asked me how big were the datura plants growing around my own plant. I made a gesture of size. Don Juan said, I've taught you how to tell a male from a female. Now, go to your plants and bring me both. Go first to your old plant and watch carefully the watercourse made by the rain. By now, the rain must have carried the seeds far away. Watch the crevices made by the runoff, and from them determine the direction of the flow. Then find the plant that is growing at the furthest point from your plant. All the devil's weeds plants that are growing in between are yours. Later, as they seed, you can extend the size of your territory by following the watercourse from each plant along the way. He gave me meticulous instructions of how to procure a cutting tool. The cutting of the root, he said, had to be done in the following way. First, I had to select the plant I was to cut and clear away the dirt around the place where the root had joined the stem. Second, I had to repeat exactly the same dance I had performed when I had replanted the root. Third, I had to cut the stem off and leave the root in the ground. The final step was to dig out 16 inches of root. He admonished me not to talk or to betray any feeling during this act. Again, feelings are energy, and we live in a world of energy. And when you put out feelings, it's like putting out smells. They intermingle with other smells. Feelings intermingle with other feelings and can cause problems. Now, that intermingling. So why is this, right? To understand the underlying overall. Now, it's not obvious here. I'm bringing more into it that comes in later, right? And from my own understandings. But it's very helpful to understand that. Right, Beena? Yes? Yeah, Beena muted.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
important. I mean, that analogy between smell and feeling, I use it regularly and repeatedly because I found no better analogy. And it's so vital to understand. It is so vital to understand. Furthermore, while I'm on it, let me share something else. Just something that I added this morning by way of a clarity. And I like doing such stuff, right? Where is this now? Just some quotes on feelings. Yes. Feelings and emotions are self-reinforcing and self-justifying. Fine, noble. Feelings and emotions are self-reinforcing and self-justifying. So this is now not directly related to what Don Juan is saying, but it is associated. So we have to be careful with feelings, right? Here's a continuation, another quote here. What we feel, for whatever reason, starts us feeling. We tend to continue feeling for no particular reason and tend to find reasons to support this continuation until the next random stimulus occurs and the process repeats, perhaps with different feelings, all of which leads to habituation of commonly felt feelings, leading to further feeling simply because of the comfort and ease of habit, even if the feeling is not particularly positive, as we are incredibly skilled at rationalizing what we feel. Yala Nova. Incredible quote from Yala. And from Fine. Another one from Fine. If I feel it. Now, this is Fine Noble putting, so there's a double quote when you read the quote. There's the double quotation marks of quoting him, but he's putting this in quotation marks, right? So he's saying something, but it's not from him personally, right? When you quote like in this way. Anyway, if I feel it, it must be right. There must be a good reason for feeling so. I know, right? It's connected to that rationalization point that Biala made, right? And we tend to do this. And we have to be very, very, very careful about this. So mood management, just right? It's so critical, so crucial. And that is part of the understanding of mood management, major part of Way-Of-Impeccability, right? Major, major, major part. Yeah, very big deal. It is going into very clear detail and specifics and understanding and full awareness and full discernment of feelings and emotions. Don Juan talks about it indirectly, but that's not enough, right? So we have to go further. Yeah, very important. He admonished me not to talk or to betray any feeling during this act. We should carry 2 pieces of cloth, he said. Spread them on the ground and place the plants on them. Then cut the plants into parts and stack them up. The order is up to you, but you must always remember what order you use, because that is the way you must always do it. Bring the plants to me as soon as you have them. Saturday, 6 July 1963. On Monday, 1 July, I cut the datura plants Don Juan had asked for. I waited until it was fairly dark to do the dancing around the plants because I did not want anybody to see me. All this is self-importance and gets in the way, as we're going to see. It really gets in the way. And Don Juan addresses this very potently as well. I felt quite apprehensive. I was sure somebody was going to witness my strange acts. I had previously chosen the plants I thought were a male and a female. I took up to 16 inches of the root of each one, and digging to that depth of the wooden stick was not an easy task. It took me hours. I had to finish the job in complete darkness, and when I was ready to cut them, I had to use a flashlight. My original apprehension that somebody would watch me was minimal compared with the fear that somebody would spot the light in the bushes. Seriously, Carlos. I took the plants to Don Juan's house on Tuesday, 2 July. He opened the bundles and examined the pieces. He said he still had to give me the seeds of his plants. He pushed the mortar in front of me. He took a glass jar and emptied its contents, dried seeds lumped together, into the mortar. I asked him what they were, and he said they were seeds eaten by weevils. There were quite a few bugs among the seeds, little black-grain weevils. He said they were special bugs, and that we had to take them out and put them into a separate jar. He handed me another jar, 1/3 full of the same kind of weevils. A piece of paper was stuffed into the jar to keep the weevils from escaping. Next time you will have to use the bugs from your own plants, Don Juan says. What you do is to cut the seed pods that have tiny holes. They are full of bugs. Open the pod and scrape everything into a jar. See, there's another typo here. Collect 1 handful of the bugs and put them into another container. Treat them rough. Don't be considerate or delicate with them. Very unusual here, right? Treat them rough. Don't be considerate or delicate with them. Measure 1 handful of the lumped seeds that the bugs have eaten and 1 handful of the bugs' powder. And bury the rest any place in that direction. Pointed here. Here he pointed to the southeast from your plant. Then gather good dry seeds and store them separately. You can gather all you want. You can always use them. It is a good idea to get the seeds out of the pods there so that you can bury everything at once. Next, Don Juan told me to grind the lump seeds first, then the weevil eggs, then the bugs, and last the good dry seeds. When all of them were mashed into a fine powder, Don Juan took the pieces of the datura I had cut and stacked up. He separated the male root and wrapped it gently in a piece of cloth. He handed me the rest and told me to cut everything into little pieces, mash them well, and then put every bit of the juice into a pot. He said I had to mash them in the same order in which I had stacked them up. After I had finished, he told me to measure 1 cup of boiling water and stir it with everything in the pot, and then to add 2 more cups. He handed me a smoothly finished bone stick. I stirred the mush with it and put the pot on the fire. Then he said we had to prepare the root, and for that we had to use the larger mortar because the male root could not be cut at all. We went to the back of the house. He had the mortar ready, and I proceeded to pound the root as I had done before. We left the root soaking in water, exposed to the night air, and went inside the house. I woke up when Don Juan got up. The sun was shining in a clear sky. It was a hot, dry day. Good omen, in other words, if this is going to be from before. Yeah. Don Juan commented again that he was sure the devils would like me. All right, there we go, confirmation. Very good. See now, for me, in my system of learning, I like to preemptively anticipate what is going to come. Why? Because it tests my understanding. Yeah. So when I said hot dry day, I hadn't read the next sentence yet, right? And so I'm remembering, I'm putting it together, and I'm learning, and I test my learning, right? So I don't believe I've learned, so that I know I've learned. Very, very valuable mechanism, right? You'll see me do this constantly. Don Juan commented it again, and when I if it doesn't come that way, right? Let's say Don Juan said, "Oh, it's not a whatever." Wow! Then my surprise. Then I go back and I re-examine my logic and sensibility. I re-examine the rationale, how I got to this, right? And I adjust my understanding. Right? Very important to make that adjustment. Don Juan commented again that he was sure the devil's weed like me. We proceeded to treat the root. And at the end of the day, we had quite a bit of yellowish substance in the bottom of the bowl. Don Juan poured off the top water. I thought that was the end of the procedure, but he filled the pot. But he filled the bowl with boiling water again. He brought down the pot with the mush from under the roof. The mush seemed to be almost dry. He took the pot inside the house, placed it carefully on the floor, and sat down. Then he began to talk. I think here we stop, right? Yeah, because we're going to get a whole long conversation here from Don Juan, right? And
Yes.
I want to
Yes, we'll continue tomorrow.
Yeah, because whenever Don Juan says a lot, why can't I highlight this? Yeah, I'm dragging. I'm holding my mouse cursor down. It won't let me highlight it. It's very unusual. Something's up with my mouse. Anyway, whenever Don Juan says a lot, we can look into his character, his worldview, his intent, etc. Right? So it's always very valuable, very useful.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Syl. Thank you so much, everyone who has joined us.
Christopher Abbott says thank you all. Thank you, Christopher Abbott, for being here.
Thank you for joining us, Christopher Abbott, or Alice Safari.
Yes. And Pushkatari joined us as well.
Yes, and everyone who has been watching us live, please click like and subscribe to the channel, and also leave a comment. Again, I'm really looking forward for your questions or comments, because by doing so, you are going to train your online algorithm, which is ultimately connected to your life algorithm.
Correct.
By doing so, you are going to train your algorithm that this tiny channel is doing something good, and you want this wholeness, use this goodness in your life. This is how we make deliberate choice. Start by making this deliberate choice. Just a tiny step, just a tiny decision. Make it. Get out of your comfort zone and just click and subscribe. It is not limited to our channel only, of course. Whenever you find some value, because we have to be really scrupulous about what we are intaking in our minds, because our life is not just part of life. Online activities are not just part of our life anymore. It is our life. It is our lives now. So please do pay attention to nutrition. Is not just only what you are eating and putting into your mouth, but also what you are putting into your mind. So please
your soul, your spirit, your energy. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. Please do pay attention to what you are offering, what you are serving to your mind, soul, and spirit. So please do pay attention and join us again. Thank you so much, everyone. See you guys tomorrow, hopefully. If not, day after tomorrow.
Yes. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye, everybody. Yes. Bye-bye.